This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
We are now approaching, or actually into, the final day 4 of Poe's Magic Conference here in Baltimore, and it has been just delightful on so many different levels, and I hope that you sense that also when you listen to these different conversations we have with conjurers, and each person has their own story, and it's been a delight to talk with some people, and we've got some more coming up with here shortly. But I wanted to first of all thank those people who are the friends of the Magic Word, who are the ones who help keep this podcast going, and those are the ones who, with their financial support, are able to provide us with the means to continue on with this podcast week after week, and also with these conventions day after day. So thank you very much for those people who have pledged their monthly support through patreon.com or given us donations through paypal.com, or just whenever that we're at conventions supporting us by saying, hey, here's some cash. I enjoy the podcast. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. And if you can't give your financial support, just those words of encouragement always mean a lot to me then too. I'm so thankful for all of you supporters and all of you listeners who are out there. So I just wanted to say thanks again to everyone, and particularly the friends of the Magic Word. And if you're interested on learning how that you can help support us with your financial backing, just go to themagicwordpodcast.com, and there will be a link where you can learn a little bit more about how that you can support us. Thanks again. I'm at the dealers area then right now, and this is the 4th and final day. We had just a fantastic show last night. Oh my gosh, 11 or 12 performers, probably went close to 3 hours, and just flew by. And we had several people from the public who were there. We're going to talk about that and a few other things then right now. Before the first thing begins here very shortly, which is going to be Paul Prater, who's going to be lecturing in just a few minutes. But first, again, I want to talk with Doug Gorman, my buddy from Texas, San Antonio. Here he is. Doug Gorman, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you, Scott?
I'm fantastic. So you're one of the dealers, and you brought your stuff out here. And so how many dealers are there here?
There's about 8, I think, 8 or 9.
So talk about some of the things that you brought and some of the kinds of things that people would expect at a bizarre convention. What are the kinds of things dealers bring here?
Well, they bring things that either have their own stories or have the potential for the performers to create stories around
a prop or something.
Around a prop, yeah, exactly. And books and pamphlets about storytelling and bizarre magic in general.
And the kinds of things, do you have actually a website where you sell your stuff as well? Or?
I don't have my own website, but I sell my stuff through GeminiArtifacts.com, which is a website that specializes in bizarre magic.
Okay, so yours are things amongst the other kinds of things of other...
Yes, I have 32 props on that website, and there are probably 8 or 10 other artists that have stuff on.
What's one of your big sellers?
Big seller has been this effect called the Tooth Fairy.
Okay.
And I haven't sold any here, but I've sold out on the website, which is part of the reason why I brought some here.
So what's the effect, basically?
Basically, the effect is that a dentist who is poor at patient relationships ends up killing 3 of his patients and extracting teeth, and the teeth end up appearing inside of a box when the police investigate.
So it's a tale. It's a
tale.
Story.
It's a story.
Yeah. That takes about, how long do they usually take? 5-8 minutes?
That particular story, probably 3.5, 4 minutes.
Okay.
I have other stories that might run 5 to 8 minutes. Yeah.
Right. In your presentation, do you do these kinds of darker, I wouldn't say dark, but mysterious types of things? I mean, like in a 40-minute show? Because I've seen your show before, and it's always uplifting, and American flag and different kinds of things that are all exciting and fun and uplifting. But this is something that is more esoteric, makes people think.
Yes, and I don't really currently do a show with these kinds of things in it. Mm-hmm. But I've found in the last couple of years that my interest in creating these things, more than just performing them, is where I get my kicks.
Well, we've had more time the last couple of years, too.
That's true. I was not bored during the pandemic.
Did you come up with some of your own ideas during that time last year?
So. All of the things on my table here are my own creations, and I made all of the props and
the woodworking and everything?
Yeah, all of this stuff. So.
Wow, so you have a woodworking shop?
I have a garage with stuff stacked all over the place.
sawdust and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, this hasn't been running very long, but you have attended other things, these kinds of conventions. Did you ever go back to the Invocation, some of those older ones?
No, I didn't get. I wasn't
Weird
interested.
Weekend?
Yeah, I wasn't interested in it at that point.
Yeah.
I would have been there if it was today, but
Yeah.
I haven't been. I have been to the East Coast Spirit Sessions in Myrtle Beach, and I'll be going next week to the Arcane Relics Summit in Dallas. So I'm trying to
hit more of them, and there are more of them. Do you find popping up now and again?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's and more people are becoming aware, I think is the word, aware of bizarre magic. Bizarre doesn't necessarily mean weird.
Right, and I think we need to dispel that.
Yeah, it's really better named storytelling magic. Many of the stories are bizarre,
yes,
but not all of them.
And some macabre,
yes.
Which is why I think it's a perfect thing of calling this Poe's Magic Conference from the standpoint of Edgar Allan Poe being a little bit of macabre and a storyteller himself.
Exactly. I think it's perfectly named.
Yeah, because that's what this is all about, really, of how to put the stories into your presentation. And I keep emphasizing this every day whenever that we're talking, is to make sure that everyone who's listening to this, it's not some sort of a strange, bizarre, occultish.
No, it's not. It's not a cult. It's not sacrificing people or anything.
We have people who are pastors here. I mean, as well. I mean, the mainstream pastors.
Yeah, and doctors and all kinds of respectable professions.
Exactly. Well, even Rolando Santos, who is here, of course, past CEO of CNN.
Yes.
So a lot of people from all walks of life.
Yeah, it's really a broad spectrum of humanity here.
That's right.
But with a single interest. Stories.
And it is something that's growing. I think that you're right then, Doug, of which we're having this being recognized more and more as being another area of magic, because we have cadabra and some other kinds of things that are for kids. We have general practitioners, which are the most conventions, IBM and SAM, and those that kind of broad brush everything. But this is more of a niche within a niche kind of a thing.
Exactly. But you know what? I think whether you're a bizarre person or not, you can learn at this convention, because stories need to be a part of magic, no matter what kind of magic you're doing. If you think about it, to answer the question, why am I doing this?
Right.
You need to be able to tell the story, which makes sense out of why you're doing it.
And sometimes you need to tell stories not with words but with actions, like Jeff McBride does, with his reign, in which it's just something that there's no story being spoken, but it's all about visual.
But there's a story there.
Yeah.
You, as the audience member, might have to make the story up, but there's something going on there.
That's right.
And you're going to create in your own mind.
In your own mind. Your reality may be different from mine too.
That's right.
We
might see the same effect and come away with completely different experiences.
Right. Just like art, exactly. Which it is.
It is an art.
Yes. And so when you go to an art museum, you and I would see something completely different in that painting, and the same thing I think would be a takeaway from some of the presentations.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well said, Scott. I did say that pretty good, didn't I? Thank you very much, Doug. I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for your friendship. I love you, man. Always good seeing you.
Good to see you.
So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Doug Gorman, and this is Scotty Out. We just finished a conversation or a lecture with Paul Prater, who was talking with us about some more important performing things, and basically to know yourself. One of the things in building a character before you do is to know who you are before that you can actually build a character around that person, or persona, if you will. And one person who has done that better than most, I just saw yesterday for the first time and was blown away. And I just had to stop him and talk with him for a few minutes. And many of you might know him as Professor BC. Here he is. And hi, Professor.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And yes, I really enjoyed your show and your character, because you perform as a Victorian-style character.
Well, actually, no, I perform as myself, but because what you watched was from a Victorian writer, M.R. James, and I was interpreting his work, I dressed to suggest a Victorian style, but I'm still a modern entertainer, simply taking you to a play, more or less, of M.R. James's The Mezzo Tent. So in that sense, I am suggesting a Victorian era without actually inhabiting the Victorian era.
In real life, you are a professor, and you teach at a university. Where are you?
Right, I'm at the University of North Georgia, just north of Atlanta.
And teaching what?
I teach Renaissance drama, Shakespeare, and that lot.
And speaking of Shakespeare, I thought it was fascinating afterwards when you were talking with us about some of the important historic tomes that you own. You talk a little bit about
Oh,
that?
right. Yeah, I am a book collector. In addition to owning every first edition from M.R. James's oeuvre, I also have most of my first editions of the works of Charles Dickens. I have a Ben Jonson first folio from 1616, which is actually the reason that I can be a Renaissance scholar, is because Johnson, in publishing the first folio, made drama important, made it a literature, and that's why we study it today. So important was that 7 years later, the Shakespeare first folio was then published in 1623, and I do own a second folio from 1632 of Shakespeare's.
Wow. Well, M.R. James that you're talking about, that was part of what you were talking about yesterday. You had a picture and everything, and so talk a little bit about that, and also why it's important.
Yeah, I've just written a biography of M.R. James. I've been working on it for the past 12 years or so. Been studying James's work. There are earlier biographies from the 80s that study him as a medievalist and study him as a person, but there has not been a biography that has tied all of that together into his fiction. And what he's primarily known as today, even though he was an academic, he's primarily known today as the father of the modern English ghost story. And there's not a biography that covers his fiction, so that's what I've written.
Kind of like Crowley, in a way?
No. Crowley's much more sincere in his in his interest of the dark arts.
Dickensian.
James comes from a Dickensian style to some degree, but he's an academic. He was the provost of King's College in Cambridge, later became its vice chancellor, and then became the provost of Eton College. So he's a very staid, dignified biblical scholar is actually what he was. But in the evening he turned into Stephen King.
Yeah. I think that's amazing, because King is my favorite writer today. I love everything he does.
And you have to read M.R. James, because King has actually pointed out M.R. James as his primary inspiration.
Well, I think after this conversation you have inspired me to do just that. But going to your presentation then yesterday, two things. One is the language which you affect, that is, of having an English type of accent that you have, as well as your attire, which is not completely authentically Victorian. You say it's kind of a mix between old and new. And why do you do both of those things?
Well, it's not even a mix so far. It's all modern clothing. It's an ascot with a Brooks Brothers jacket and a waistcoat that I had tailored in England for me. So it's all modern cut. I'm not wearing a frock coat or anything, cutaway or anything like that. But it suggests the Victorian. It's the style the Victorians would have.
The watch and chain.
I do have a watch chain. You embarrass me, however, because I wear that most every day.
So you make it modern.
Yes. Yeah, I wear a waistcoat into class, and I just like to carry a pocket watch, so that makes it comfortable for me.
But then as far as affecting the English accent on that, is that something that you had to study, or it came natural, and why did you do that? Is it because James was?
I grew up in London. I split my time as a child between the Midwest, where I was born in Kansas City, and London, where my mother worked.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so are there shows that you do that are full hour or 90-minute things based upon kind of what you did yesterday? Although yesterday you were saying this was the first time you actually presented this particular trick.
Right. What you actually saw yesterday and what I was demonstrating was actually I'm putting together a routine specifically to go out on book tour with. So it's really not a magic show that I'm doing. It's an introduction to M.R. James, and what it amounts to is a show and tell. It's like the story lady at the library reading a story to you and occasionally turning the book around and showing you the pictures. Is what I'm doing with the story The Mezzo Tent by M.R. James. Is while I recite the short story, I actually have the prop that does the ghostly manifestations as I'm telling it, but I'm not calling attention to the fact that this is a magic show. I'm simply telling the story, and the audience sees the story come to life through the use of magic. So this is a little bit different than what might be my regular show.
And so in your regular show, is it similar from the standpoint, again, having an English accent and wearing the type of clothing?
I wouldn't do a British accent in my usual show because for the most part, I'm playing myself.
Okay.
I'm just a professor with interesting artifacts that I've collected in my show, right?
Gotcha.
And I present my own inventions, pieces and props that I've created myself. Very many of them are book-oriented because, of course, that's what my background is.
Right. Fascinating, and good job. And look forward, whenever that you finish the book, you're going to be going out on a book tour, you said?
That's the plan.
And you're going to go across the country? You're going to stay out here in the Northeast? Or
no, I'll be going through the UK and the US if and when the book finally does find ink.
And will that be something a publisher will set up for you, or are you going to try to arrange that yourself and go through Barnes & Nobles or types? Or
a little bit of both. What happens on a book tour is the publisher sets you up with a publicist. They pay for a certain amount of the tour. If you want to extend that, especially if you have other speaking engagements, which fortunately I have, then they can piggyback that onto places that I'm going anyway to do other lectures and conferences. I can appear in the bookstores in that town.
That's what I was doing for Joshua Jay when he had his book out recently, in which he had his publicist that I was working with him and the publisher and the publicist, actually, to try to coordinate things. They had a general idea of where they were going to be going in the country, and they would pay for the night he was going to be lecturing or talking in the bookstore or television or whatever he was doing to promote that. But he also then wanted me to help set up some lectures for magic clubs while he was in the area, basically.
Right. It's just about the reverse for me. Publishers just love to piggyback off of what I'm already paying for.
Oh, okay. I understand completely. Well, fascinating, and good job then yesterday as well. Very inspirational.
Thank you, Scott.
So with the Magic Word Podcast, that's Professor BC. This is Scotty out. As we continue into our fourth and final day over here, one of the people who is a presenter yesterday and will be again tonight with an amazing seance is Terry Tyson. Hey there, Terry.
Hey, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
You as well, sir. And you actually were doing seances on board a cruise ship. Is that right? I understand?
Actually, it was a mentalism show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the seances were land-based. Last year in Southern California, we had the entire month of October. We had 2 shows a night, sold out every single night, and we had up to 5 tables working in the same room for a seance. So we're looking at about between 35 to 42 people.
So when you're doing a lot of tables like that, are there different people who are mediums or at each table, or are you kind of like when you're a chess master and you're running between different tables?
Yeah, that's probably mostly true. I do, as necessary, go table to table. But in this case, I also had a partner that I worked with. We played different roles in the scripting of the seance. So I was the seance master, and Matt Bruce was the seer. Okay. And so we just structured it that way. But I have done the seances by myself as well, multiple tables. And it's just a matter of paying attention to what's going on.
How do you do that? I've never heard of such a thing, actually.
You just pay attention.
I mean, you're each table has got their own thing going on.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's all basically the same because we're doing bottle pendulums. We're doing red lights.
Explain bottle pendulums, by the way.
Okay. For those of you not familiar with it, basically it's a pendulum suspended within a glass bottle and resting on a table. And
suspended from its cork, basically.
Yes, with a cord. And the spirits are drawn to them, or it's sort of like a Geiger counter for spirit activity during the seance. Mm-hmm. And that is...
Or an EMF meter, or an EMF.
Oh, yeah, but no batteries required.
Yeah. So each table's got something going on, and
yes.
They're having their own realities happening, and so you're having to go from table to table and knowing from table when you're leaving?
Well, basically, I can actually have done it from my position and called out to table number 2 or 3 or 4 and to particular people at that table. Like, Betty, what's going on at table 2? Please describe what you're seeing, what others at the table are experiencing. And so that's what's kind of interesting. And we get different tables with different personalities and different people, and it's all quite remarkable. It really is to see. And the seance is not, this particular incarnation of the seance is not a themed seance, so it's not the Jack the Ripper or Titanic or the other tropes that exist. This is to be a spirit encounter. Okay. That we will make contact and there will be some sort of evidence of that contact that people can observe, feel, smell, touch, etc.
And one of the things also that you present yourself really as a ghost hunter, much as what I do as well, rather than being a medium or
right, ghost hunter ghost hunter, or what I call myself is a seance master, and so therefore I'm not doing any of the channeling or anything. The people at the tables, the sitters, are doing any channeling that may be taking place. And I've been doing seances, Scott, from the before the days of Seance Magazine.
Okay, it's a ways back.
Yeah, it's a ways back. And myself and Scott and Larry Keene and a few others.
Scott who?
Scott Davis. He was the sort of the founder and editor. And then I had a regular column, sometimes 2 columns in the magazine, every issue. And then there were a couple there was one Terry Tyson exclusive issue. And I'm a young man's face on that cover, I'll tell you. It was a few years ago. But I started out in mentalism and went into seance. And seance has really sort of taken off quite a bit for my working career. But my roots are still in mentalism. My day job is as a public speaker. And I use the mentalism and magic to illustrate message points during my talks.
And so when you do seances, do you do them year-round or just particularly during the holidays of Halloween?
Yeah, that's the heavy season, but I have had requests to do them at other times of the year, and it's very venue dependent. So if there's a ghost walk, for instance, in a town, in a historic district, they say, we'd like to supplement this one. We're having a special event. We'd like to do a seance for us.
What about different times? I'm sure the answer is going to be yes. Of you being called in after there has been a recently departed person and they contact you and say, hey, can you help us?
Right. I have had that call, and depending on where they're at, I will visit with them, depending on who they are and what their circumstances. But the message I give is that I do not have the power to contact your relatives. This is something that you can do because I'm sure, and this is sort of the stock answer, that you feel their presence, just like I feel the presence of my father, and he's been gone for years and years. And you can feel their presence. Why don't you just talk to them yourself and get comfort in that regard, as well as for them seeking out help from doctors and perhaps therapists or even the clergy, if that makes them comfortable. And I'll be honest with you, it depends on, with big air quotes around it, the magic that they believe in. So if they believe in the magic of spirits, then the message that they get from their spirits is going to make more impact than somebody who believes in the magic of psychology or whatever it is, their belief system. And I encourage them to seek help. But I am not a therapist. I do offer encouraging words to them if they feel the need. And that message usually is just feel free to sit and chat with them on your own.
So you said your seances have evolved over the years.
Yes.
What were they versus what they are now?
Early on, they were heavily scripted, lots of special effects.
Things breaking and falling.
And strings being pulled, and there's pre-electronics, Scott. So as my friend Jamie Dawes in the UK, he uses rat traps, and that's how we met, talking about rat traps to move books on a shelf, and things of that nature.
Right.
And spirit slates, for instance.
I think a nice little thing, by the way, I'd read a while back, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, that you've read, is where that you would put like a foam earplug underneath a book or something somewhere, and then walk away from it because that will slowly open and move the book off the shelf.
That's right. There's all kinds of things like that. To this one is ungimmicked. There's no gas involved. There's nothing to bust. And
it's what you call a naked seance.
I might get arrested for that, but it depends on the venue, I suppose. And it would not be unlike what Paul Vudini does during his seances
in England,
in the UK, right? And his purpose is a little bit different, and his approach is different. But the thing where we sort of have touchstones together on would be the non-gimmicked foundation. Excuse me. That we're not using gimmicks in this. I'm not saying that I won't go back to that,
right?
Because
this is working for you now, and you can go anywhere with it.
Yeah, I can literally do it with a small suitcase,
right?
Or if necessary, things in my pocket. I often will bring a wine cork with a pendulum on the inside, a couple of red lights for candles and things of that nature, and I can do a full-blown seance right there.
Do you like doing shut-eye or red light seance, or is there one you like better than the other, or like less than?
No, I sort of like it all. The way that it's structured is that in this particular seance, it does have the red light seance in it. It does have scrying of a dark stone or an object or a black mirror. And it does include some spirit messages at times and the bottle pendulums. So all those elements are used, and it's built to the very end. And at the very end, depending on the audience and the sitters, we will have one person perhaps serve as the medium for a spirit that they allegedly can see and talk to.
Right.
And and so it's really interesting. Oh, and it's all very positive. There's no jump scares. It can be creepy because people experience odd things, but
because you always tell people, obviously, beforehand to be very conscientious of every sound, smell, whatever,
absolutely,
movement you might feel.
Yep, and it's really interesting, too, Scott, that during the seance they will often be very quiet. Because I will ask them aloud, if you see something, say something. And then I'll ask them aloud, Bill, are you experiencing everything? He goes, yeah. And it sort of fades off. Then when the lights come back on, I ask him, what was going on? And they just
spill their gas.
Spill it. And then everybody else at the table said, we saw this, I experienced this, I saw a presence in the room. So that's always fun, and it's always necessary if a performer or magician is going to do seances, I highly recommend to have the download session at the end. Regardless of the fact if yours is heavily scripted with like a theatrical play, with a climax and an ending, you still download with your audience what did they experience.
Or their personal experiences, right?
Yep.
Good way to finish that off, and also this talk. Thank you very much.
You bet, buddy.
Appreciate that. So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Terry Tyson. Scotty out. Kind of drawing down towards the end of the day, and in fact towards the end of the conference. One of the people who has been just doing it all at this conference, giving not only a lecture but also performing the parlor show, as well as a dealer I've got with me from Colorado, Mark Strivings. Hey there, Mark.
Hey gang, how are you doing?
Fantastic. And so this has been really good for you. This is, you've been coming to these kinds of things probably for a long time. But first, how has this been for you? How do you like the conference?
Oh, it's been great. I go to all kinds of conferences like you do, and I got to tell you, among my favorites, without exception, are the Bazaar conferences. It's such a wonderfully eclectic bunch of people. It's not the normal magic crowd. It's nothing wrong with the normal magic crowd, mind you, but it's a different bunch, and it's a wonderful bunch of people, and it's been a while since one of these has happened, and it's been a while since I've been to one, so this is so nice and I've seen old friends that I haven't seen in years, and of course that's always the best part, and so it's been terrific. It really has been a lot of fun.
Has this been the first one since COVID that you've been out to?
Yeah, this is the first one. I've been to a couple of other magic conventions, but this is the first Bazaar convention.
Did you ever attend back in the old Invocation and the Tony Andruzzi days?
Unfortunately, I came along right at the very tail end of the Invocation days.
At the beginning of the Weird Weekends, I guess.
Yeah, I was at all of the Weird Weekends, and I've been to all but one of the East Coast Spirit sessions. This was my first of the Baltimore conventions. And I've had a great time. I'll be back in Myrtle Beach in January for the East Coast Spirit Session. So, I love these kind of conferences.
You have so many different ideas and inventions and products that you've had on the market that have been for sale, and then there have been limited supplies, and then you're working on something new all the time. Like your Peak wallets have been great. And I don't even know if you have Peak wallets available anymore.
Oh yeah, I've still got them. I don't have them here.
No, I didn't notice. That's why I wondered.
I've still got them. It's one of those things that and there are thousands of them, literally all over the world, and I can't let them go out of stock. It's one of those things because they have become a standard staple of working pros all over the world, and I feel obligated, and I want to take care of my guys, and so as a result, I just can't let them die out. So as long as I'm kicking, they will be kicking.
Well, that's good, because yours is one of the better ones. I think it's out there. I mean, as you said, there are maybe not thousands, but there are certainly dozens and dozens, or other hundreds, thousands. What?
There are thousands of my cases out there. Yes.
Okay. Oh, your case. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just saying in general. I mean, there are a lot of Peak wallets out there, but I'm saying yours. Yeah. Then there should be more thousands out there because they're great.
Oh yeah, and I don't mean for this to sound like it does, but they come and they go, and they just do. And but the Sight Unseen case, which is what we're talking about, is still going strong, and it's been out for 27 years now, and it's still going like crazy. So.
And where can people buy that if they're interested? Or that and other kinds of things you got here?
Specifically for the Sight Unseen case, your favorite dealer should be able to get it for you. Okay. You can always contact me directly. I've always got them on hand, but Murphy's has them, so as a result, they're available all over the world.
How do they reach you?
Easiest way to reach me is to send me an email, and it's Marky April, that's M-A-R-K-Y, Mark like Mark Strivings with a Y, Marky April like the month, at AOL.com. So Marky April at AOL.com.
And the other kinds of things that you got, some things you were talking about during your presentation, how that over the last couple of years you've had an opportunity really to do some publishing and to come up with some different ideas. And so you've got this hefty book right here, among others.
To be honest, I've quit counting in terms of how many books. It's right around 40 at this point. And with the advent of COVID, I had literally a list of things that my thought process was, if I ever get a chance, I'll sit down and I'll write this book. Well, COVID came along, and suddenly I had nothing but chances. And so that's what I did. And so I've had a whole bunch of stuff come out in the last 2.5, 3 years, that a lot of which, candidly, probably never would have happened otherwise. So both the good and the bad.
The good and bad there, I was going to say. Yeah. I was talking with someone else about this particular book, about what do you call it, The Quick and the Dead? The Quick and the Dead. Which is a compilation of just some of the living and dead tests. How many of them are there?
Oh, Lord. I couldn't even begin to tell you. In the book, there are over 200 individual references. The book itself is over 300 pages. In the bibliography, there are over 500 references, and I know for a fact I've barely scratched the surface. When I finally basically drew a line in the sand and I said, okay, I'm going to write the book, and whatever I've got in my files at that point, that's what we're going to run with. I can tell you the book, as we speak, the book has been out about 6 or 7 weeks. In that period of time, I've added at least 3 dozen more references to my files. Yeah, and it's just stuff that I came across. So, they're literally all over the place. And to give you an idea of just how much of it there is, the Quick and the Dead, the Living and Dead test itself actually enjoyed such a huge heyday back in the first half of the last century. They were literally everywhere, and I came across, purely by accident, I happened to glance right at a Ring report. I don't know about all of you guys, but I don't read all the Ring reports. I'll flip through them, and but I happen
gloss over them.
Exactly, and I happened to look right at one, and this is, I'm going to say, back in the 40s, they had literally banned living and dead tests from their meetings. They didn't specifically say why, but my money is on everybody was doing them, and it was everywhere, and they were going, no more living in dead.
Well, it was around the time, of course, of World War II, and after World War I, and when that was really a very big thing, people wanting to contact it, and there was a lot of belief in that.
So presentations based around that were huge, and so it was really pervasive, and they've been everywhere. I mean, they're still big to this day, but not at the level that they were back in those days. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So you're uncovering a lot of those things that have been gone for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Resurrecting the dead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's I'm convinced as hefty as this work is, and it is hefty. I mean, it's a brick in a purse. It's a monster. Yeah. But as hefty as this is, I'm fully convinced that there's a ton more out there that I just haven't come across yet.
So you think eventually you'll have a volume 2?
Well, I that's a good question. I don't know. I suppose it's possible.
Maybe next COVID go around.
Yeah, the next COVID. Yeah, it's going to be a ways down the road if that happens. But if it does, it wouldn't surprise me that there's easily more than enough material for another volume. Yeah.
And the other thing that you had, which was your murky, what is it called, murky manifestations. Mm-hmm. The way you were describing that, it reminded me a little bit of Rick Maui's book of Haunted Magic.
Haunted Magic, yeah.
I love that book. Does this have presentations like that are kind of more macabre?
Yeah, this is all what I think of as spirit, quote unquote, happenings. So it's the little thumps and bumps, the ringing bells, the lights that flicker, those kinds of things, little tiny manifestations that can be easily attributed through presentation to the spirits for the most part. And what prompted this was in my reading, I came across a spirit bell, a close-up spirit bell, and I'm talking real close-up, like 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
And I read the thing, and I was immediately entranced. I went, this is so cool. And then it occurred to me, I thought, I'd be willing to bet nobody knows about this thing. And it's right there in print, but it's buried, really seriously buried. And I thought, it's criminal. Nobody knows about this stuff. And I'm sitting, and I added it to my files, and I'm sitting there with these monstrous files going, nobody knows about most of this stuff. Right. And so I thought it would be a crime not to put a lot of this together in one spot that the guys can just open and flip through and let their imaginations run wild, which is what's happened. It really has been amazing.
So this is something really to stimulate your thoughts. Not so much of fleshed out routines and presentation, so much as it is, here's an idea. For an example, I guess I was just talking with Terry Tyson earlier about like this little earplug that you could put underneath the book and a little sponge thing, and as it starts to expand, then the book will tip over or something when you be far away from it. Those kinds of ideas?
That kind of thing. And so in some cases it is fully flushed out routines, but it's also that there's tons of just little tiny things like that, and I've seen those. That's actually a very cool thing to do with the earbud thing. But yeah, it's a lot of that kind of stuff. So there are fully flushed out routines, there are complete presentations, but there are also just little tiny happenings like a book falling over and how to accomplish that kind of thing that are in here.
And that's something I don't think that we should overlook, and that is particularly in these types of more, not bizarre, but I'd say dark presentations where they're much more serious and something's going on rather than just telling a story about the ropes are 2 or 3 and now they're back together or whatever, of having something that's going to be more meaningful magic is what I'm trying to say, meaningful presentation. With that, it's important, I think, that we have these little subtle things that happen that not everybody sees, not everybody hears nor feels, but if 1 or 2 people do, they're going to say, wait a minute, did you see that? Did you hear that? And then they start talking about it, and then say, no, I didn't. And so you just need to be very present as to when you're seeing these presentations to be able to pick up those little minutiae. So that's the kind of things you're talking about, I assume.
Exactly, and I think that is by far the most powerful stuff that you can do. If you perform something and literally the whole audience sees it all in unison, that's all well and good, and there's certainly a place for that. But if you're sitting with a group of people and something happens that is genuinely strange, but only 3 people actually see it, you'll get these looks across the room. Did you see that? Did you see that? Yeah, what was that? And it begins to create a myth. Literally, a handful of people saw it, others didn't. Discussions come up about it. When everybody sees something happen, discussions are brief,
right?
Okay, or they can be. But in this particular case, if it's something like that you catch out of the corner of your eye and you're not real sure what you saw or what you heard or whatever it might be, that's incredibly powerful.
I think I've just put my finger on what I've been searching for all weekend, exactly what we're talking about right now, which differentiates magic from these kinds of presentations, specifically what we're just talking about, where a few people will see it, and that's where myths will start coming from, because people swear, I saw this, or I heard this, or felt this, and they actually do, but they're more perceptive. They're watching, or it might have been closer to them, or whatever, as opposed to, let's say, a card is signed and then lost, and when it's found, you make sure everybody sees it. So in other words, it's experience. Magic is experienced by everybody. These kinds of presentations are experienced perhaps by just the few, and everybody will experience something, but not everybody the same.
And what happens at that point then is that those people also walk away with a story that they tell the others who didn't experience it, and that, oh my gosh, you missed it. You didn't see that. It was right there, and that kind of thing. Yeah. And it's an entirely different kind of a performance. It's a beautiful thing. It really
Did you ever work much with Lee Earl, particularly? I know you were in Phoenix.
The 6.5. Yeah.
Did you? Part of the 6.5. I just spoke with Kent Nepper a little bit earlier about that. In fact, and but did you work with his manifestations and helping with his seance thing?
I didn't, and it's one of the great regrets of my life. I never even got to see it.
Oh, really?
Which, to this day, I will forever be bummed about that. While it was running, I guess it's one of those things you just kind of assume it'll still be there when I get around to it, and I just didn't. So punch me in the nose, because wow. But yeah, I was around when all of that was being developed, and his main assistant is also a very, very dear friend of mine, and he and I have had a ton of conversations about stories and things that happened and what all that they did in the course of putting that all together. It was a fascinating thing, and now I just kick myself for never having been able to experience it. So my loss.
The only way of looking at that now, I guess, is through the writings and the DVD and the audio and everything that he has published or put out, I guess, as part of a big packet set on how to do it,
right.
Similar thing.
Yeah, and one good thing about Lee's an excellent writer. He's got excellent technical skills as far as computers and graphics and all that. So if you get something from him like that, it's very concise. It's all there. It's beautifully produced. It's well worth.
It's kind of funny when I was talking with Kenton about that very thing. He was saying, like, when Larry Becker was going in one direction of certain things with the business, Lee was learning more about the technical desktop publishing and that kind of a thing, and getting to understand how computers worked a lot more. So that was kind of his thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Good partnership.
They were the yin and the yang. They really were. Yeah. They were both sides of that particular relationship. And truth be told, when I got my first computer, the person I called for some information was Lee Earl.
Oh, wow.
And because from where I sat, he could make a computer sing and dance and tell jokes. And so he was the one that I called, and I know more than once I'm on the phone and the response on the other end was a very confused, what are you talking about? But I didn't know what I was talking about, so that's why I'm asking you, Lee. Yeah. So, but yeah, and he's a good buddy. We go way, 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 way back. Yeah. And so, yeah, they were definitely a very symbiotic relationship in that regard. Right. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying this convention. I'm glad you're really a part of this. I mean, it would not be the same without you, so thanks for being here, Mark.
Oh, my pleasure, and always good to see you, my friend.
Good to seeing you as well. So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Mark Strivings. Scotty out. We're reaching the end of the convention. Actually, I guess we have. The only thing left to do is there's a seance that was postponed from last evening that Terry Tyson is going to be doing this evening. And he's getting a few things ready and getting ready to call on the spirits. But before we do, I wanted to speak with someone who was the keynote speaker of this weekend. And he was put to task to do a lot of things, even drawing for the raffle, pulling numbers out at the very end. I mean, he had you working from start to finish. Here he is, Jeff McBride. Hey, Jeff.
It's wonderful to be here, and this is the great continuation, kind of a legacy of a long line of bizarre magic conventions.
Congratulations! You get the Andruzzi Award as well. So.
Well, I was a friend of Tony Andruzzi, and I was at the original Invocations in Chicago, and then that's where I really, really connected with Eugene Berger, and it really changed my life. So it was the writings in the Invocational that really gave me permission, in a way, to take magic a little bit more seriously than just a lot of jokes. As Eugene said, that magicians did something kind of strange and wonderful during the 20th century, that the wise man became the wise guy.
Yeah,
and they kind of trivialized magic, and Max Maven and Tony Andruzzi and Tony Raven, they were the ones that put the K back onto magic, and the kind of mysteries. And they empowered magic. They gave it a boldness. They gave it a sense of depth, a sense of mythology, and that was really interesting to me at a time, in the early 80s, when I thought magic was all about, rock and roll and show business, and this was like, no, magic is about storytelling and folklore and mythology and maybe more hidden meanings that we are not even now aware of.
And don't you think this has changed a lot from the original invocation to where we are today with this conference?
Well, I think the invocation drew a lot of different types together to explore, the edges of magic, of bizarre magic. And, there was, Robin, the Cardor the Great, and, he did comedy mind reading. And then there was the kind of tongue-in-cheek dark comedy of Doc Hilford. And then there was the kind of bizarre darkness of Masculine Mage, and the kind of trickster sage of Tony Shields when he showed up, that he was only kind of a legend in print. And it drew all of these different people together, Jim Magus and all of these other, writers and creators. And I think what happened there is people met their kind of tribe, their kind of community, and they deepened into those communities. There was the Shadow Network with Carl Heron, which I was a member of, the Shadow Network for many years, which was basically a mail art community. You had to post things and send them out to other members of the community in order to stay on the list.
It was a physical thing that actually had to put a stamp on it and mail.
No, you had to mail. You had to mail physical objects and routines in the mail, like, print up for the whole list and mail, and that's how you stayed on. It was, that was, one of the kind of prerequisites for staying in that community was that you had to publish and had to share, and there really wasn't even the internet back then. So that's how it was done. It was mail. It was, mail art. And that's what kept the community together. And that community deepened. And then there was, Mystery School started, and that became its own thing. And the Inner Circle of Bizarre Magic formed up in Watertown with Joe Cabral and Joe Lantieri and that crew. And that's still going. And then there was the Phoenix Gathering that spawned off, spun off from after the 9th year of Mystery School, and these other kind of bizarre and esoteric currents in magic that were kind of looking into different areas of magic that weren't just comedy clubs, weren't just nightclubs, weren't just party magic, and not theater shows. That was taking magic a little bit more seriously, and at the same time, kind of having fun with magic in the way that we do here at this gathering. There's a sense of humor to the magic here and to the community. Doesn't take itself too seriously.
And that's what's very enjoyable about this whole thing also. It is very much like a family where you kind of make fun of each other, you poke people, and in a very fun way, and everyone's having fun here.
Yeah. Well, it's an honor society in a way, where they're honoring people for their work, and they're also kind of saying, like, we're all equals in this community. No one is inflated or put on a pedestal above and beyond. And that's not true for magic societies. I've been around the world to other magic societies in other countries, and there's this whole kind of status trip of hierarchy. Yeah, and this community really, really nurtures fellowship and equality. Yeah.
Now, this afternoon you had about 14 people or so. You had your workshop that went on for a few hours. What kinds of things were you talking about? I assume it was much like the Magic and Mystery School.
Well, no, it's not like the Magic and Mystery School actually at all, because at the Magic and Mystery School, we're actually working on people's performances, and it's a 7-day experience. Here in 3 hours, my super session, I line up about 30 or 40 different routines.
Wow, that's a lot in 3 hours.
Oh, it's quite a 3-hour ride.
Taking a drink from a fire hydrant.
And people have their notebooks, but it's driven by their questions. I give everybody a question card, and they write down 3 questions or more that they really want to know and learn. So it could be about technique or presentation. It can even be about marketing. It could be about audience management. It can be about traveling. It could be about, getting a manager. It could be about social media. So I have a lot of experience working with a lot of magicians for about 35 years now. And I'm in Las Vegas. I'm kind of a hub of the Las Vegas community. Everybody that comes into New York, everybody that comes, whether they're from New York or from Europe or from any other, they come to Vegas and they kind of pass through the mystery school.
Right.
It's kind of a center point. It's kind of a hub of a wheel.
It's like a rite of passage.
Yeah, and also, we have the Wonderground nightclub that's been running for 11 years.
It's been on hiatus for the last couple.
Yeah, well, because of course. And when it's fun again, we'll open it back up and it'll be bigger and better than ever, of course. But you were speaking about my super session specifically, and that's really driven by the needs, wants, and desires of the people that attend. It's just not top down. It's very different than a lecture. At a lecture, you're teaching people ideas, concepts, and practical magic effects. Of course, I teach practical magic effects in my super session, but I'm also responding to the needs of each individual in the class. And I really like that. It keeps it fun for me. We call it student's choice. What you want, you get.
And you've given this at other conventions as well, I assume.
I have given this at many other conventions. It's a 3-hour experience. And it's been incredibly popular, and it's different every time. Sure. So I have students that have been studying with me year after year after year, and we meet at conventions, and maybe it's the only time they get to study with me for that year or for 3 or 4 or 5 years. But we get to, Matt Franco comes to these, and my other students come to these it's kind of a refresher course, but it's also deepening into their own magic, and they trust me as a resource and as a guide and a magic director to give them good information.
So that's an additional benefit for people who are convention organizers to book you, to have you to present that super session, or at least have that offered for people, you think?
I understand the magic convention kind of business. And I realize when I come in, I can do close-up, and unique close-up that no one does. I can lecture. I can do stage. I can also MC, and I can also host a super session. So I have 5 different, and at this event, I even did a close-up parlor show. And I was doing other things on the side and hosting a table at the late night. They call it the Black Cat here. That's the jam session, the late night kind of scene. I understand the need for people to perform. They want to come to a convention to perform. They want to learn. So late night, everybody sits around a table, and like you were there the other night, everybody takes a turn performing and sharing a story or a joke or a piece of magic
or a song.
Or a song, yeah. And that was wonderful too, because
that was wonderful.
Yeah, so whether it's music or magic or comedy or storytelling, everybody has something they can share at the table. And I love facilitating that sort of a late night experience.
A lot of fun. Well, listen, you really added a lot to this convention and helped make this the success that it is. And so, it was something that has been synergistic with so many different people who are here, and one has added on to the other, and it's just been a wonderful experience, and you've been an integral part of that, obviously. So I thank you, as everyone else has, thanks.
And I also understand my role as a magician, as a keynote speaker at a magic convention. It's not just to grandstand and broadcast. It's to narrowcast and have conversations with people like we are now, and be able to take time between the big events to just sit at breakfast with somebody and listen to their show idea, or to have a magician show me something and to have me give them some feedback, or for me to teach a little bit like Carol Fox used to do. He would sit in the lobby and gather a crowd and just share and teach a little bit of magic. And it's what Eugene taught me how to do. It's not about broadcasting. Sometimes it's about just sitting for a half an hour, having a conversation.
And narrowcasting, Alex.
Narrowcasting and giving people attention, because what Eugene, when you would speak to Eugene Berger, you would feel that you were getting direct wisdom from a master, and people that would change people's lives, even more than watching him in his close-up, even more than just watching me do my thing on stage. It's the personal time, and that's why people come to the Magic and Mystery School in Las Vegas, is to spend a week with people that deeply want to improve their magic.
Yeah. And this has been a nice convention from the standpoint. It's been intimate. It's been a very small convention. So with these others, when you're talking about sessioning, there are, for an example, I remember at Magi Fest and seeing Juan Tamariz and Eric Mead and people sitting around the table, and it was 3 or 4 or 6 deep around the table. You can hardly get to that. But here, where you only have about 50 or so people, everyone's much more accessible. Like you said, I think we've had a meal or 2 together. We've sat together. You run into everybody all the time, all day, and it's very nice to hear.
So I think if people want a really life-enhancing personal experience, they will come to next year's Pose Magic Conference.
I think that's a good way of ending that. Putting a cap on that. Thank you very much. I appreciate, Jeff, your friendship and also everything that you've been doing for the magic community over all the years.
It's been nice getting to know you much better at this particular convention.
Yeah, well, it has been, actually. That we've been friends for a long time, but we've had a little bit more time to bond, so it's been great. So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Jeff McBride. This is Scotty out. The convention is now pretty much a wrap, and we've had just a phenomenal time here this weekend, and we began this talking with Vince Wilson, and we're going to wrap it up then also. I promised that we were going to actually kind of do a debrief and kind of, after it's over, to kind of see what you thought, and here he is right now, Vince Wilson. Hey, Vince.
Hey, Scott. Thank you for having me back again. The air in here is very dry, so if I take deep breaths, it's not COVID.
I think you need to have another drink, though, of some vodka.
Yep.
Enjoying martinis here together.
That's right.
As we close out the weekend, and the spirits are truly with us here tonight.
Oh my gosh, it's been no pun intended, phenomenal weekend.
Yeah.
The energy level is so high right now; it's off the charts. I mean, if you didn't come, I'm sorry, you missed a lot, and I think Scott will agree with that.
I 100% agree with that. There are so many different people. I'm hoping we get this same group of people coming back again next year, just because, even if they're not performing, just the interaction that we've had and the friendships that we've made and the bonds that we have grown closer and knowing each other better. It's just been great.
Yeah, one of the things that people say that makes this conference different from many other ones, and this is not, and be very clear, this is not a slight against other conferences. This is usually how it's done. It kind of happened organically, I imagine, over decades of doing magic conventions and conferences. But a lot of different places you go to, if you go to most conferences and events, what happens? The lectures come out, the workshops are done, and those celebrities of magic, those pioneers, they go back to the rooms. Or they hang out in a green room of their own, and they don't mix and interact with people. And granted, that's impractical with the larger ones because there's just too many people to interact with. But here, we like to think no matter how big this gets, you'll always be able to hang out and mingle. We have the Black Cat Lounge, the after hours.
Where we are right now.
Yeah,
I'm seeing
right
there's
now.
Kent Nepper, there's Peter Samuelson, there's Jeff McBride, there's Vlad, everybody is here, and Paul Prater behind the bar, everybody.
Yeah, luminaries in magic, just here mingling with the, hobbyists, professionals, everyone, just on the same level, the same playing field, doing magic for each other, having some drinks together.
Yep.
It's amazing. It's amazing to think that this is even possible. It's a lot of magicians' dream come true to be able to just hang out with their heroes and the people they admire.
It is very fun, and the fact that you have recognized people with certain awards, and we're going to go through this right now. We had the Andruzzi Awards.
That's right.
And so you have a list of the names and the awards that people have been presented here?
I do. It was a interesting evolution of this story. Some of it has to remain secret.
But that what you can tell.
Yeah. What I can tell on the air is that a couple of years ago, when we were during the pandemic, we're all, everyone's suffering because of it. All the work is gone, that sort of thing. And we were doing Zoom shows, and we were inspired by one crazy evening. That's the secret part. What happened? One crazy evening. To go and try to, thinking about it, the Bizarre Hauntings, the conference as it was called before, was always about camaraderie, getting together, being close to each other, and mixing and mingling with everyone, all right? And when we changed it and rebranded Pose Magic conference to be more inclusive, but always theatrical, always bizarre, and always unique. We also started thinking about the invocationals and the weird weekends of old. Now, for your listeners who are not familiar with those, these were usually put on by Tony Andruzzi and later Doc Hilford. All right, and these were incredible, crazy, amazing conferences where you learned about being unique and different. It was very occulty and mysterious, but also a lot of fun, a lot of drinking,
very comical.
Yeah, very comical, playing for laughs.
Tongue in cheek with a lot of things.
Yes, exactly. And we kind of wanted to do that and bring a tribute to it, and that's what I tried to do this weekend with my little award show.
Well, that was with the capper. I think you're right. As far as coming out and making this seem very serious with the chanting songs, and then you come out with these cloaks and everything over your hoods over your head.
That's right. We had the Gregorian chants playing in the background, or at least a public domain version of that. Yeah. Three magicians in hooded cloaks come out, very serious and formal, in their black hooded robes, and they just do the silliest magic tricks for just a moment, as if it's like they're Shakespearean actors pulling a sponge ball out of their nose and doing the severed finger illusion in a card spread, and then they walk down the aisle in single file, and I come out in a hooded robe, and I do a bit of comedy and fun, and we give out these amazing awards based on the golden age magicians of old. As a tribute to Tony Andruzzi, the late great bizarre magician and performer, who this was a lot of inspiration to the great storytelling magicians of today.
So let's start at the top over there with the Andruzzi Award that was won by...
the top award, the name after Andruzzi, was by Jeff McBride. So Jeff obviously was our keynote speaker, and we'd always intended to give him that one. He actually knew Tony Andruzzi and hung out with him at the Invocationals, and, unfortunately Andruzzi passed away in 91. So he wasn't a part of the Weird Weekends that came later on, but the Weird Weekends were tribute to that. So I think at the end of every conference, when we do these award shows to honor those who were exceptional in theatrical, storytelling, mentalism, and magical wonder, we should always play it for fun and always have this wonderful tribute to that man.
Okay. So, who were the award winners?
All right, the award winners were Jeff McBride for the Tony Andruzzi honorary award, the Thurston Award, named after Thurston, obviously. All right, I'll stop saying that, so we just go through this list. Yeah. Thurston Award went to Rolando Santos of the Linking Ring magazine. All right, the Keller Award went to the magnificent Peter Samuelson. The Herman Award went to Christopher Taylor, who just retired this year. Well, from creating, but he'll still be performing. The Dante Award went to Paul Prater. The Animan Award for mentalism went to Terry Tyson. The Carter Award went to Crystal Younglove. The Blackstone Award went to Scott Wells. That's right. And finally, the Poe Award went to Joseph Daniels. That's right.
Very flattered to have received. That was so amazing. I was going to tongue-in-cheek say, I don't like Dorothy said in The Wizard of Oz, I don't suppose, Mr. Wizard, there's anything in that bag for me. And all of a sudden, my name is called.
So let's talk about how these awards are given out. All right, so your listeners don't think we just gave it to you because of the podcast or something like that. The awards are honorariums. Okay, they're not voted on. There's not like a committee and that sort of thing. Actually, we cast stones into a circle under Baphomet. No, I'm just kidding. That's straight
under
up.
Full moon.
That's right, under full moon. No, we just want to recognize, and we already own 100 of these. Okay, so we want to give out 10 a year for 10 years. Okay, and what we're trying to honor is people who are recognized as bringers of wonder to magic. Okay, people that contribute to and perform wonderful magic, mentalism, bizarre, a little biased toward that, of course. But anyone who shares wonder successfully with people and promotes that ideal. And Scott Wells absolutely does that. So you definitely win an award. It does help that you're here, but you would have gotten one eventually anyway.
I am so flattered, and I don't know what to say. I'm blushing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. So it's like and these we will keep having these here. So let me ask you a question, Scott. I want to interview you for a moment. All right. What do you think brings wonder to magic? What is wonders to you when it comes to magic? I know it's more of a kind of a philosophical question.
It is kind of philosophical, and it's something that brings wonders to me was something that has been kind of an underlying theme this whole weekend, capped perfectly tonight by Hiawatha in his talk when he concluded this evening's activities.
Yeah, what a beautiful stream of consciousness that was.
Oh, it really was. But he kind of encapsulated everything that's been said this weekend, and that is of being yourself, be true to thyself. And to find your character is to not worry about trying to be somebody else. Sure, you can try to take a trick of somebody else's, but don't necessarily take their patter. I say necessarily, I said at all, take their whatever they've been saying. It's not what they're trying to do. But I think that it's important that you identify who you are and be comfortable with that. And like what Kent Nepper is saying, it's not that difficult. It's not hard. Go out and be yourself. Try this. And Paul Prater has said that. I mean, everybody, all those who were talking throughout the whole weekend, what I was getting out of this and what my takeaway really is, to answer your question, is to be the best you can be, because there is nobody else that can be you. I have recognized that a while back, but it was said again and again and again by so many different ways, by so many different people, to emphasize that point of that being the crux of what makes magic, and you are the magic.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Of course, the audience is what you're talking about, but it's actually.
No, I'm talking about you.
Oh, thank
Everybody
you.
talking about each individual.
Yeah.
Each person has magic in them, and that I am the magic. You are the magic. She is the magic. Every person has magic in them, and they just need to bring that out and present that to the audience. So this way, because there is no one else who is you. We can all do Professor's Nightmare, but we do it in a different way, and so. You are the magic. I am the magic. So each of us, when we present that, we should recognize that. Carrying that on into life, you don't have to be an entertainer, because I would say that what they're saying to us this weekend is that if you are, I don't care if you're a janitor to the CEO of the company in that building, that you all are individual and we're all part of the whole. And without that, there wouldn't be the synergy that makes this a perfect world. And it's an imperfect world, but it makes us the melting pot we are, I guess.
Well, thank you, Scott Wells. And this is Vince Wilson with the Magic Word Podcast. But yeah, what I loved about this entire weekend was the diversity. The diversity in the styles of magic. Yeah. A lot of people were kind of weirded out by the name change, but the old name was Bizarre Hauntings, confused people.
Yeah.
And we decided to go in a different direction with it. Poe is a storyteller, all right? And a good magician, all good magicians are storytellers, all right? You convey wonder through your magic. If you're doing the most basic card trick, or the most elaborate stage illusion,
right?
You're conveying wonder, And that is what every single performance, lecture, workshop this weekend was trying to convey to people. It's like emphasize that when you do it. We had Dan Eckert with his more esoteric, more esoteric, lecture. No tricks, no demonstrations of tricks and illusions. Talking about philosophy, esoterica.
I love that so much, and that was opposite of something that Jeff McBride was giving his super session this afternoon. And so there are people in that, and so there are only about a half dozen or so of us who were listening then to what Dan had to say, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, he was talking about advertising and things that are subliminal messages and the placebo effect and different things that resonated with me. I every lecture I think, okay, that's the best lecture. And then of course it finished with Hiawatha. Yep. They're all great.
Yep. Yeah. And you had Bubble Magic with Meadow Perry, which was like, and people were like, "Oh, Bubble Magic! I don't get it. Why is that even here?" And then they see it. And when you saw that, wasn't that amazing? Like it's like ripples in a window, smoke and bubbles, fire occasionally. Putting a person inside of a giant bubble.
Right.
She didn't do it like playfully a little bit, but not in a kid kind of way either. It was sophisticated and elegant, and beautiful.
Yeah.
And we had the Jeff McBride performing, which is, of course, always amazing. He performed a couple of times this weekend.
More than just a couple.
Yeah, exactly. He even jumped in. He's like, I'll just do a parlor show.
Yeah. And even at the end, he was drawing names for the raffle.
Yeah, exactly. Just every
We're not
kind of
finished with you yet.
That's right. Get to work. It was and then we have like extra magicians stopping by, like huge recognized names in magic and mentalism. Larry Haas stops by this weekend.
Jeff and Tessa Everson right there.
That's right. Yeah, they're stopping by to hang out with us. They're regulars of the theater sometimes.
Yep, we saw Eric
Denning.
Was here last evening. Not Henning. Yeah, Eric Henning was here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was here last evening, and we've had coming by. The owner of the Magic Warehouse stops by. Just stopping by to say hello and hang out with us and have drinks. You can't beat that.
Yeah, all the reason why I think next year that people who are listening to this should sign up and come, because this is a little bit different convention and the kind of convention that you would enjoy, you get a lot out of. And I really don't care if you're a children's show magician, because you're going to be learning more about storytelling. Don't think that this is not something for you, or a gospel magician. Somebody, I think earlier that Hiawatha was talking about, there are a variety of people here, whether that you're Christian, agnostic, atheist, pagan, Muslim, whatever. I mean, everybody is joining hands here, basically, and singing Kumbaya.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep, and as you know, all magicians do worship the devil. I'm joking.
Some people believe that.
Some people. There's YouTube videos I thought was a joke, and they really I thought it was like a parody. And there's a guy put a YouTube channel like all magicians are devil worshippers.
Oh my God!
It's an hour long.
Oh my God!
Yeah, when he plays, it feels like parody. You're like, no, this can't be real, and it is.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, listen, this has been an amazing convention. Thank you very much, Vince. You've done a great job, you and the volunteers who have organized this and put it together. It's been a labor of love. I know it's not a big financial thing for you as far as profit goes.
No. Magic conventions. Well, I'm sure there's an exception to that, but these bizarre magic conventions, storytelling magic conventions, they're not profitable, but they're amazing, and you're going to have a blast when you come.
And people are really, again, pitching in. People are bringing alcohol. I mean, we got alcohol here. We got food over there. Then right now we had pizza the other night. We got all kinds of stuff. It's just a lot of fun. So.
It is. You will come here next year. You're going to have a blast with us. You're going to meet all your favorite magicians. You're going to learn about how. Also think about this. We're talking about all this fun stuff and everything, but this kind of what you're going to learn here is going to help your career.
It will. Ultimately, that's right. It's not just fun, but there is some serious stuff going on here that will help your career financially.
That's exactly, because remember, when you're performing, and especially in high-volume markets, you're competing with 1,000 magicians who are doing the same card tricks you do. How can you stand out? Always remember that. It's a question you should always be asking yourself.
And that's what this was, again, I was getting out of this, is you are different than everybody else. You are the magic. You have to stand out. Exactly. Well, Vince, thanks very much for putting this together. It's been fantastic. Let me be a part of it. And I am, again, thrilled and honored with receiving the Blackstone Award. That was great. So for the Magic Word Podcast from Baltimore, Maryland, and the Lord Baltimore Hotel, that was Vince Wilson, the organizer over here. This is Scotty out. Thanks, Vince.
Thanks.